All right, welcome back to our Coaching Network. Again, I'm Pat Curran here, one of the co-founders. Tonight is our second of 3 leadership and culture talks. Loved last one. Super excited about the group we have again tonight. Coach Braxton Harris from Campbell University. I'll let you intro yourself again. He's our leader of the leadership and culture talks. Braxton, I'll shut up. Take it from here. Appreciate you.
Hey, Pat, appreciate you doing it. I'm excited about doing this. I thought last time we did this, man, I'll be honest, I took a lot of notes, got a lot of stuff out of it, enjoyed the conversation. Got 2 guys here today. I love the experiences that they have, and I'm excited to hear how they relate to the topics of leadership and culture. And so I got Marcus Lovings. He's the associate head coach and running backs coach at Arkansas State. And I'll let you coach in a little bit, kind of tell a little bit about your background, where you come from. And then Taylor Housewright, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Montana State University. So guys, thanks so much for being here. If you don't mind, kind of tell Marcus, kind of lead off with you. If you don't mind, just tell a little bit of kind of background, just kind of some people, maybe they can connect to where you've been from and those kind of places.
Yeah, first of all, just like to say, man, thank you for having me on. Pat and Braxton and Taylor, it's always good to be with you yourself, man. Very humbled by this, but yeah, so GA at Mississippi State for Sylvester Cream and Dan Mullen. So I GA for 5 years at Mississippi State. And then after that, I went to UL Lafayette, stayed there for 7 years, had a ton of success there, got let go. So then we went to Nichols down in South Louisiana, and a very successful place. And then spent 2 years at Austin P, and then 1 year down at Nichols, and now I'm at Arkansas State. So just a little tour around the South a little bit.
Perfect. Well, Coach, I know Coach Housewright, you've been to a couple of places. If you don't mind, kind of talk a little bit about how you got into it. I love listening to your Meet the Coach, and I love the story about how you got into coaching. And that was a pretty unique story. Everybody's got one.
Yeah. So I knew I was going to coach probably in middle school, high school. I knew I wanted to coach football, college football, in some manner, and graduated and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I lived with Pat Curran and Tim Curran, and was managing a bar and living life as a 23-year-old downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, making, I think my expenses at that time, I was laughing with my wife, was about $200 a month. So my income bringing home on a monthly basis was pretty good for a 24-year-old. And
you're
then
saying your margins might be better then than they were now. Is that what you're saying?
A little bit, yeah. That's what happens when you're not married, right?
That's right.
Typically. But and then it was a Sunday morning at 8 a.m. I got a phone call from Mike Bath at Miami of Ohio. I had just gone to bed because obviously working the bar, and accepted the job. I think Don Treadwell got fired at Miami halfway through the year, and he told me to come up. We were going to change the offense, and I didn't know what I was doing, and didn't realize at the time how big that was. Obviously being young, and drove 10 hours to Oxford, Ohio, and the next morning was coaching Miami, and our first game was against UMass in the Patriots Stadium. I'm making substitutions on the sideline 6 days later, and I don't know anybody's name. We had to hire like 3 different coaches on offense, and so it was a whirlwind. I lived in his basement, which was neat, and then from there, I got kept as a graduate assistant on defense for Chuck Martin when he became the head coach. And then went and coached at Wittenberg University, coached receivers for a year. And then my alma mater, Ashland University, I coached receivers for 1 year in 16 and DBs in 17. And then I went to Wyoming as kind of an analyst role, working with tight ends and running backs for 10 months in 2018. And then 2019, I went to Mississippi State as an analyst with Joe Moorhead. And then everybody got fired, so he went to Oregon as the offense coordinator and brought me back, brought me with him up there. My wife actually was coaching soccer, got a job at Oregon State coaching soccer, and I got a job at Oregon, which very rare. She no longer coaches soccer now. I came to Montana, they didn't have women's soccer, so and then was there for a year during the COVID, and then Brent Vegan, who I met at Wyoming in 2018, got the head coaching job here at Montana State and asked me to come last February. So been here, 15, 16 months. Love it. So bounced around, but not looking to move anytime soon. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, you guys won a few football games pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. The staff prior to us did a pretty darn good job recruiting. So they made it easy, and we had some pretty good players, which obviously helps anywhere you're at.
No doubt. But let's hop into it. Coach Lovings, if you don't mind, we talked about and this kind of labeled as leadership and culture. And so I'm a big definition guy, defensive, as you know, Coach, Housewright, defensive guys are always paranoid. We're always worried about everything, right? So for me, talk about the word culture. Coach Lovings, if you don't mind, do you mind defining culture, and then kind of what is it to you, and how do you work through culture?
Yeah. So to me, culture to me is just about whatever you set your behaviors to be, I guess, I think a leader or leaders drive culture. I really do. And I think those help produce the results that you have within your organization. But, my brief time at Austin Peay when I was a head coach, man, I really tried to set a culture of discipline and accountability. And like I said, basically, I think the leader kind of starts it, but then he infiltrates it whatever it be the players who are the leaders, or the assistant coaches are the leaders. It's about what your daily kind of routine is, and then your daily behaviors by everybody. And I think that kind of sets the culture. I think everybody's different, and you can do things different ways, but two great examples are probably how not Jimbo Fisher, but Nick Saban and Dabo do it. Probably two different ways, but they produce great results. So I think it's just a set of behaviors you're trying to achieve within your program.
Yeah. Coach Housewright, kind of add on to that, kind of your culture. I know first time for you leading an offense there at Montana State, defining that culture. What you define it? How do you guys do it there at Montana State?
Yeah, I think culture really is when you're talking about a group of people and their achievements and their goals and their everyday attitude. To me, I think I think people get crazy with it and can come up with a bunch of fancy things. I think ultimately it's what you're going to hang your hat on outside.
Am I frozen? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think he froze up on us.
In what you do and toughness, I think those are the things that drive a culture here. We talk to our guys sometimes about being Montana men. And when you think of the state of Montana, it's hard not to be a tough dude that cares about others and is going to do whatever he's supposed to do, whether that's for his family or for his team or whatever the coach says. And I think if you do that, put it on us as coaches. If you do exactly what we say and what we want you to do, and we lay it out there for you and it doesn't work, that's fine. They'll fire us. The players will still be here. The university will still be here. But if you try to do your own thing, it ain't going to work, and I think looking at last year, our success, that was a pretty simple one. It was real simple culture. It was, you play as hard as you can, be as tough as you can, and you do exactly what the coaches say. And in the long run, it'll work out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, both of you guys kind of hit on the same deal, talked about daily and every day. And I think that's a piece that in leadership, and I know Coach Lovings, when you're head coach there at Austin Peay, each day it is a new day. And if you think what you did yesterday is going to carry over today, just assume it's going to carry over. That's where, when I was a head coach, those are things when you lost, you thought you figured something out. You thought you had moved on to step two. And you got to step one every day in that spot. And so I love hearing those things. Talk about leadership. Talk about Coach Lovings, if you don't mind, kind of define leadership, what you see it as in your role there at your position as associate head coach there at Arkansas State. But then also, what did that role look like as a head coach for you?
Yeah, I kind of define leadership as two words that just really, kind of jump out as me. And one is just influence. How do you influence people, whether it be good, bad, whether they're scared of you, but lead by fear, or whether you lead by love. I think influence is so big when you talk about the word leadership. And then, respect, people, have to respect whoever they're listening to. And I think that's really key. So, influence and I think respect are really big in terms of leadership when I kind of think about it. My role here as assistant head coach is, man, I'm doing whatever the vision is of the head coach, whatever his vision is, man, I'm going out and I'm trying to give 110% to, whatever he asks us to do, whether that, during the summer months, if I need to be in the office, my butt's in the office and I'm doing what he needs to do from an A to Z standpoint while he's out the office, or, if he asks me to break down a certain breakdown on the, for a game plan, I'm trying to do that. So, but leadership, obviously, like I said, influence, respect, two things that really stick out to me.
Absolutely. And Coach Housewright, talk a little bit about difference in leadership for you as far as the different roles that you've carried in your experiences in your past.
Yeah, I think definitely leadership there's tons of different scenarios, and I think a lot of times we try to use the military as examples in football, which is sometimes hard because it's not the same thing. We're obviously playing a game, and what's going on in the military isn't a game. But ultimately, it's like Coach said, influence, right? I think everybody has a leadership role in some aspect. Even the last guy in the totem pole has a little bit of leadership, and I think it changes as you're in college. We're dealing with kids and emotions and children, if you will, at some aspects. So I think as a coach, leadership can come, what's right from wrong, and what you're trying to get implemented. And then you find the guy on the offense, for example, which is typically your quarterback. Can he take the things that you're saying and spread it amongst the team? Not only the X's and O's, not only what everybody's supposed to be doing on the field, but off the field, and the philosophies of what we're trying to accomplish and the culture of what we're trying to get done. But I think the part of leadership that, to me, in the roles that I've been in, I think you can, in different levels, I've been at every level now, and I think it's interesting to see how good the leadership is at the smaller levels, because the guys are playing the game because they love it, and they're not playing for tons of money or scholarships or TV and all this other crap. And I think that tells you a lot. And I think leadership starts first off for the love of it. Any leader at any profession, they probably absolutely love it to death. And a lot of times those are your quarterbacks, but it can be anybody. And I think the good leaders can talk to different types of people and understand where they came from. I think that's one of the things that I've noticed here in Montana is we've got 40 guys from the state of Montana, and everybody else is out of state. So kids grow up different in Montana than they do California or Idaho or Texas or Ohio or New York or whatever. And every kid comes to college with a different background. So I think for me, it's, we had a guy last year, Troy Anderson, who was an unbelievable player, but probably the best leader. When he spoke, the coaches listened. And we've all been around some guys like that. And that's special. We've got a quarterback right now, a young quarterback who does everything you want, 4.0 engineering student, probably the fastest guy that will play all year, and it's definitely the fastest on our team. But sometimes struggles socially because he is so smart and just doesn't understand why you don't try to be great at everything, and doesn't understand somebody maybe didn't grow up with a father or grow up have a great family or support system or some of those. Not that he's a negative, but he's got to understand everybody comes from a different background. And I think that's part of the leadership that guys screw up a lot of times is, no, this is how you do it. Yeah, that's true, but you got to be able to reach people in different ways, and
Yeah.
Coach said, and it goes back to influence, not just influence people like you, but all types of people.
Yeah, I think that connection piece is probably the biggest piece that you got to be able to do is connect different people that come from all over. And like you said, from different backgrounds,
Right.
kind of talk just both of you in this spot. I liked what you said and talked about connecting and getting everybody within your staff, within your organization to be able to connect and have some leadership into that. What are some things that you've done or maybe that you've seen done that gets people maybe they don't have the title, right? They don't have the title of a coordinator or associate head coach, but they're important in that room as well. What are some things you've seen done or currently doing? That
Drink beer together.
The key is buy the beer, right? Not just drink it,
Correct.
buy it, right?
No doubt.
But what do you see done, and what have you done? Maybe it's happened to you. Maybe it's been something that we've all been in this room, been a GA, been a quality control at different levels, and been the guy that nobody knew, was in the room at some point in time. How do you connect those guys?
I'll let you take Coach Taylor. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I think one thing I've had 10 different head coaches so far. Nine different head coaches. I'm 33, so that's not a great thing. Hopefully that slows down for a while. But I think it's very unique on each staff, and I think a head coach gets busy, man. We're all a bunch of prideful men that hang around each other all day long and have arguments and coach in a game that we love, and we all think we're right in some aspect. But I think sometimes when you leave the office, you got to have those get-togethers and hang out. I know I joke about drinking beer, whatever it is for you. I think it's your obligation as a head coach or a coordinator in some aspect to hang with the staff and have the wives over. And I think we all know that can get hairy at times, but I think the more you get to know each other and the more that each other care about each other in some aspect, the more decisions being made, everybody's going to follow because they know it's coming from a good place. Now, if you're a bad person and everything's made for your own selfish reasons and not what's best for the team, then you probably have some issues getting along with the staff. But I think there's a lot more people out there, and there's a lot more issues in our profession amongst men because we think somebody's doing it selfish, and really they're not. They're just trying to make the best decision they know how, So I think hanging out outside the office is huge for me. Having people over to our house, my wife and I try to do that as much as we can as staff, and just getting to know people. I mean, it's amazing in some of the staffs I've been a part of, taking the analysts and the GAs, we're all surviving, hanging out, families and all that typically you get along quite great. It's amazing how many assistant coaches probably never even hung out with each other outside the office, and their wives didn't even know each other's names or whatever that might be. And I think that we got to have our own little team in order for our players to have their team in some aspect.
Good point.
Yeah, I just think that, we're talking about leadership and stuff like that. Just as far as people on the staff, is just give people ownership of things. I know they might not have the title, but, you can name someone a camp coordinator. You can say, hey, man, why don't you be in charge of, little kids camp? Or you can say, hey, man, why don't you in charge of the third down breakdown? Why don't you be in charge of, and let people kind of own that. I think ownership is really big. And now you can teach them how to do it and stuff like that, but everybody's important within the organization, whether it be a player, on the scout team punt, or whether it be your starting punter, or, whether it be a starting wide receiver. It's the same thing in the football building. Everybody has a role to play. And I think Bill Belichick said the best, do your job. People got to take ownership, of what they do. And I also think too, I think one of the best things I've been around is a guy named Dustin Rutherford. He's at University of Memphis right now. Is he does these things called peer evals. And what you do is, and I just tell people now, man, I just kind of pull them aside and say, hey, man, maybe you could do it like this, or hey, this is what I kind of think of you. Why don't you speak up more in certain situations? But basically, you just write down these things that people do well and people don't do well, and then you give it back to them as a peer. And some guys who are quiet on staff, you wish they would speak up more, because they usually do have great ideas, or guys, who might be, totally out in left field sometimes. Sometimes they need to be quiet. But I think peer evals are a great way to kind of assess, where people at. And like Coach says, trying to get the fit right, because everybody's trying to get some synergy is just great, but some is not. And I think once you understand where your peers are coming from, it helps out the whole process.
Yeah, I think that's a military thing.
It is.
Yeah,
yes.
That's pretty neat. Yeah.
So when you did a peer eval on somebody, was it anonymous peer eval, or was it come from you as a coach?
Yeah, so we made it anonymous. So we did it at Nichols for sure, where we passed it around the group and, talked about people's strengths and weaknesses and what they want to see more of from people as far as that stuff goes. And then, you just hand it back to them. And then, if you really want to dive into it, let's discuss it as a group. I'm not saying you got to play kumbaya all the time, but yeah, I mean, it's really good and really healthy way to kind of get the balances and checks, either within your staff or your organization, or maybe even your players.
I think that the key is we throw the word accountability all the time as coaches around, and we hold our players accountable. And yes, we're held accountable, obviously on Saturday, but the consistent daily accountability for us as coaches, to me, I think I heard a guy say coaches are the least coached group of professionals in the world. Nobody gives feedback, and if they do, they're up in the cheap seats and nobody wants to listen to them anyway. The guys that you actually want to hear feedback from, we don't always give it to each other in those spots. And so that's a great way to be able to intentionally engage your staff and create ownership, but then also accountability at the same time in that spot.
Yeah, it's amazing. I agree with what Coach said, the pure eval. It's amazing how much you can not communicate in every aspect of your life, where we communicate with our players important, or our wives or our kids, whatever, and then we don't communicate as a staff. How amazing that can be, and how hard that is at times, in a fine line for whatever reason. I don't know why, but hopefully I figured that one out.
If you do, write a book and you can make a lot more money than you're making right now and work less hours. But I think that's a great point as far as the communication aspect of it. Going from a head coach back to a position coach for me in this role, is it's amazing how much stuff that you think are understood in your room specifically, that it's not even understood in the room, So I've gotten to the place where, I treat everybody like it's day one install. Like it's day one, your first day in the room. When we meet together for the first time, whether it's summer session, whether it's fall camp, whether it's spring ball, it's day one. Like nothing goes stone unturned. And like, as you can tell, I'm a big definition guy, so that everybody clearly understands that. Because to your point, if I say leadership, if I say culture, it means something different based off where you come from and what your background is in that spot. And that doesn't mean you can't have those kids can't bring those into the room, but we all have to see things the same way as we push together. If you're in this room, this means this. It doesn't devalue what your past is, but to be a part of this organization, we got to see and push together in those spots.
Yeah.
So both of you guys have had a lot of success, been in some different programs. Coach Housewright, talk to me a little bit about one of the things you've seen in winning programs. What's a characteristic over your time? You've been at, like you said, 9 different head coaches in those places. Some of them have won a lot of football games. What's a characteristic that really you saw and you pinpointed and you go, man, this is a characteristic in all these winning programs that carry together?
Yeah, I think, the first 2 things, I guess, characteristic or not, that come to mind are toughness. That was never a question. Guys fought through everything. I think kids sometimes forget the battling through some injuries is a good thing, because you don't screw up the timing or have someone else in there practicing or whatever, then you're playing on Saturday. But the other thing is one common goal. I always go back to that. I think, not to get into a different conversation, but I think our country at times needs one common goal. And I think what we have in college football is a bunch of kids coming from all over the country and different backgrounds. And we should have one common goal, and that's to win it all and win our conference and win the national title. And everything you do is for that. And the bad teams I've had or been a part of, they don't have one common goal. Guys are out there for themselves. They're out there for other reasons, and it has nothing to do with just winning football games. And I think sometimes it's as simple as that. If you can get that amongst 110 guys, 115 guys, whatever you got a darn good chance, because we all know you're going to play the first 11, 22 starters on that first game aren't going to be the same 22 starters week 12, and everybody's got to be in. We played 4 quarterbacks this year, and the guy that ended up taking the reins was the 4th string going into week 1 and was playing special teams and receiver, but he didn't care. He was just trying to help the team, and he still came to quarterback meetings and still did everything. And we had a senior quarterback who was the starter here in 19 and brought a transfer in, and he took his job, and he was the greatest teammate ever. And then that transfer, we benched him for a true freshman or a redshirt freshman and bypassed the senior. And he didn't care, and he got his chance in the national championship game which isn't necessarily the best first start of the year for you, but he was about the team. It was more exciting when we were scoring touchdowns than anybody out there scoring them, and I think when you have that, that's contagious. And it was a very simple for us this year, and every good team I've been around, it was all about winning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the toughness piece goes a long ways. I've always joked, bad teams, you show up to practice on Tuesday or Wednesday, and they probably got 20 or 30 guys that are beat up, not practicing, standing on the sideline. Good teams don't have that. So which one? I think there's a mental process when things are going bad, your body starts failing on you, or you don't want to push through. But when things are going good, not many guys are standing on the sideline during practice or getting ready for Saturday. And I'm not sure which one goes before the other in that aspect, but there's something to it.
Winning solves a lot of problems.
That's right.
The sky's bluer, your girlfriend's prettier, everything's good right there, right?
Right.
Winning solves a lot. So, Coach Love, let's talk a little bit about some of those characters you've been a part of. You've seen, obviously, there at Austin Peay, you guys got a team in the playoffs, if I remember right, that had probably never been in the playoffs. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I agree with Coach. I think that it's hard to find, but I mean, synergy, I think, just two dynamics, coaches and players, like I say, being on the same page, a common goal of trying to win games. And then the big thing that I've been a part of that's really freaking fun, man, is just when everybody drops their ego, whether it be the starting quarterback, whether it be the OC, whether it be the head coach, whether it be, man, everybody just working. And, guys not caring about, who gets paid what. Guys don't care about, are we throwing a touchdown or running a touchdown? Are we running 4-3? Are we fucking blitzing? Excuse my language. It doesn't really matter. Just drop your ego at the door and let's just try to get it done. Just like Coach said, just trying to win, because it's really special. It's a feeling that you get when everybody's on the same page, and it gets really fun. And if you could bottle that up, because we move around so much, if you could bottle that up and take it with you when you have a great staff and great players, man, this thing becomes really fun. It's when you don't have, and losing's part of it, but I would rather lose and have a good time with players that are all in than a bunch of a-holes,
That's right.
And so, but it's hard to find, people. You got to bottle it up and just enjoy the ride while it's there,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was talking to our head football coach. We had a new strength coach that came in and started summer one with our guys. And man, he is running the dog out of them. I mean, it is old school. You are running, they are running laps around the football field in time. I mean, they're running 110s. I mean, they are running, right? And I told our head coach, I said the other day, I don't know if we're going to win more football games or not. I said, we don't know that till September 1st. I said, but I know this. I'd much rather take this group into that game than the group we've had in the past, because I'm seeing what these guys are making those choices. They're getting to that place and they're having to make a choice they keep going or not. And kind of to your point, adding to it is, man, there ain't no guarantees that you're going to win a game. If we could all guarantee that if we do A, B, and C, that we're going to win this season or you're going to win a national championship, we'd all do it. I mean, hands down. And so, but the thing to your point is, in this profession, man, I'd much rather take tough, gritty football players and go to work with them, because I think when you're tough and you're gritty too, to your point, Coach, when you're really tough, you put your ego aside, because ultimately the goal is there and it's tough to be able to do those things. So it's funny because we had that conversation this morning. So I don't know if we're going to win more football games, but I know this, I'd much rather go with this group than what we've done in the past in some spots and been able to grow through that. And so I thought that's really good. Kind of the alter part of that is the losing programs. And what are the characteristics in those losing programs that we've seen in that? One of the things for me that I've seen is in the losing programs, you've seen it's desperate. Like every moment is a desperate moment, whether you're calling plays, it's got to be the perfect call at the perfect time in the perfect situation. And coaches feel that. And if coaches feel that, I know that we push that to players in those spots. And you feel like everything's got to go exactly your way in that spot. And if it doesn't, it's the desperation to survive, not necessarily the confidence, hey, we'll roll with the punches in that spot. We'll be able to survive this and overcome in that spot. And when I was a GA at Mary and Baylor, we were really good, won a lot of football games at Division III school. And our defensive coordinator at the time, he's now the head coach. I remember it was probably a bad game for him. I think he gave up 21 points, and everybody's on him, and that stuff. And I'll never forget, like, he got his tail chewed in a staff meeting one day. And I thought, man, he's going to transfer that energy to everybody else around him. And he didn't. He was as calm, he was cool, as collected. He knew what the problem was, and he knew how to go fix it in that spot. He wasn't desperate in those spots. And I'll never forget that as a 23-year-old GA, I was waiting to see what in the world happens. And he just went to work, in those spots. And so programs that I've been a part of that were not successful, that desperate piece was a big spot that I always kind of saw in that.
Wow.
So if you guys seen similar or kind of got similar stories in that?
Yeah, I love, on the positive side, I love when we have a player-led team but the negative ones are just when, everything's acceptable with the players, with the peers, and to me, it's all about player accountability. I mean, if a guy walks in to study hall late, a coach or the lady who's in charge of study hall, or the guidance shouldn't have to say it. It should be one of the players. Same thing if a guy's late to practice. Same thing if a guy, says something to coach that's out of line. The players got to hold each other accountable. And I think pure accountability is really, really critical to an ever evolving culture, to like the leadership that like sustains itself. Because if the senior's doing that to the freshman, well, hopefully when the freshman turns a junior, he's doing the same thing back when you got another freshman on campus. And then you can get just everything to be cyclical when it comes to that. So I really think that player accountability, I believe in that in the most highest regard. And that's a culture piece and a leadership piece in itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. I think, bad teams, whether that's, to me, there's two different parts of that. It's on the field and off the field. And typically if you have bad players, you're going to be a bad team. I think coaches can help out in some aspect. And a lot of times we try to be too complicated, but like coach said, off the field, that's ground zero. You hope you go to a bad team, you're turning a program around or whatever. You don't have those off the field issues. We can fix the recruiting issues. We all know what a good player looks like, and for the most part, and like that's the part that I was at Miami of Ohio, and like I said, I got there and they went 0 maybe won one game, and then the next year we won 2 games. And it wasn't that we were so outmatched athletically. It was just off the field. And like you said, the kids were desperate to win. The coaches were desperate on hanging on every play and every moment. And then off the field, you're still dealing with young men, and they start to go the other way. Why am I putting all this work in? Why am I doing this? The frustrations, they're having to go to class and at a school that cares about football, and the kids make fun of them because no one goes to the game because they're terrible. There's so many aspects to that thing that you just got to get it turned around. And once you can, and it can move in a hurry, it really can. Yeah. But when it gets bad, it's bad. And like coach said, typically it is all the off the field things and just letting things slide that, oh, well, it doesn't matter. We'll probably lose again, or this isn't going to help us win Saturday, whatever it is.
Well, I think the point that I like that it's got to evolve. It's got to be able to evolve as your team grows, as your program grows. It's like from your seniors but it's still got to evolve, and the program's got to evolve, and leadership's got to evolve in that spot. I know for me, when I took over a program as a head football coach to when I left the program, man, I was not the same person. Mm-hmm. Now I had a bald spot, but that was part of it too. But you evolved in that, and I remember when I first took over, I thought every little piece of it mattered. Like everything was so important that if we didn't do all these little bitty things right, and when I say we, I mean me, as far as a leader in that spot, that it was going to devastate the whole program in that spot. What I've learned and kind of how I've evolved, I think more than anything, is find out what's the most important. Find out for me, whether I'm the linebackers coach that day and don't have to mess with recruiting, or if I'm the recruiting coordinator that day and I got a recruiting visit, what's most important to that day to helping our program win. And everything else, it's just noise. It's just the whirlwind of the world that goes along. Doesn't mean it's not important. It just means it's not the most important thing. Because what happened to me, kind of what you're talking about, Coach, is your synergy, your energy that you bring to the table. If you're divided in so many different ways, it becomes negative in that way. And you start pushing that stuff. And so as a leader, I think I found myself evolving from, instead of all these different things that go on, just find the one thing. Just focus on the one thing that day in that spot. And so I'm interested to hear both of you guys, because both of your stories and both of your pasts are so diverse in your experiences. How do you think your leadership has evolved over your coaching career to be able to be where it is today?
You want me to start, Coach Taylor, or you, brother?
You got it.
All right. Yeah, I think, man, obviously, I've gotten wiser as I've gotten older. I really, just try to set the expectation every day. Hey, this is what it's going to be. This is what it's about. And then, if you don't meet the bar, let me help you understand why you did not meet the bar. But, set the expectation every day of what it is and what it's not. I can't just say, hey, man, just show up to a meeting at 8:00. No, I expect you to be in there at 7:55 because we're going to show them there. We're going to be 5 minutes early, and so, I can't sit there and be worried about a kid at 7:57 if I didn't set the expectation for him. I can't just assume that, like you're saying, it's a day one, all over again. And I think the thing too is evolved is just over communicate. And this generation right here is the worst at communicating. They are the worst. And whether it be a text, whether it be call it, like they don't pick up the phone, and I'm not big on it either. But I mean, I have frustrations with this the way they communicate. But you just got to get down their level and work with them. But I'm on my group constantly about communicating. But I've gotten better with just over communicating and setting the expectation for the group.
Yeah, I think that's the one piece that Coach you talked about is communication. That's what I've noticed about myself. And there was I started out coaching in some aspect, then kind of took these GA analyst roles and then back to coaching. So you get to sit back and watch a little bit and analyze yourself. And I think one is communication and just not assuming anything, and I think that's something that I just assume guys are going to show up on time. Sometimes I assume they care about where they need to be and when and how they need to be there and what are they doing when they get there. And you can't do that, and like I said, every kid comes from a different background. And patience, I sometimes catch myself not patient. You should know it how I know it and all these different things. And I think from a leadership standpoint, kids will get frustrated. No kid wakes up and wants to be a bad kid and wants to be a bad player and show up. We do too. It's too hard to be part of college football and not care in some aspect, unless you're making a ton of money. And maybe some of those guys haven't been there yet, but some of those guys making $8 million a year, it might be a different story. But ultimately, I think from a leadership standpoint, I've found myself wanting to teach more. Am I just yelling or am I teaching? And I think early on as a young coach, I was just yelling at times because I thought that's what was supposed to happen, right. And I had coaches that did that, and you don't have to. I think there's a reason that kid screws up. If he screws up because of effort or focus, yeah, he probably needs an ass chewing in some aspect. But if he's screwing up because he just completely missed something or one little piece to the equation that it's not all fitting in there, you got to teach, and I think sometimes the yelling part can, especially in the middle of the season on a Wednesday and the kid just took a test or girlfriend just dumped him or he's been beat up, whatever, that's going to go through one ear and out the other. And what are you actually getting accomplished other than making yourself feel better, and trust me, there's times where I want to make myself feel better.
But I think it goes back to what you said earlier about good programs is one goal. The goal is to win. And for us, it's we got to be a part of that too. We got to have ownership as coaches. Is to your point is the finding out the why he's not connected to what he's supposed to be doing. Not necessarily to your point. Feel better because you got it off your chest that he dropped 2 passes last week that you're still pissed at. And you're still holding that against him.
That's the best, right? When someone drops a pass, you say, catch the ball. Well, no shit.
Right.
I catch myself doing that all the time. Like, well, why didn't you catch the ball? Let's figure this out.
Yeah. And so it's the same on defense, coach. Hey, you got to make that play. Oh, correct. Man. You mean I'm supposed to, when the ball's there and I got to make the play, it's the proverbial throw strikes, to the pitcher, throw strikes. I always love that. My little boys got done playing baseball this summer and you know how many times throw strikes, man, that 10-year-old out there, I'm glad you reminded him that, you know, poor guy, he forgot, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I think to a certain point, there's a lot of simplicity, but truth in that message. Is what are we saying as coaches? Are we saying throw strikes, the obvious that doesn't help anybody, doesn't connect to that kid? Or are we asking questions kind of to your point of, hey, why is this happening? You know, I think that's probably the thing, you know, that I think is missed in coaching is ask, listen more than talk, you know. And to your point, Coach Lovings, is I think our players nowadays want us to listen more than they did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. When I was a player, my dad was my high school coach, and man, you just did what you're told. You didn't ask a why. You know, that's not the world we live in anymore.
Right. No, I agree with you. Different generation, you know, and we're closer. I mean, I would like to think I'm closer to this generation. It's just totally different though, man. Totally different.
Yeah. You're close, Coach. Don't worry. You're still in there. Don't worry about it, man. You're still looking good.
Closer to 40, man. They're getting old, brother.
So talk a little bit about, as a leader, you know, we talk about, and you've come up with game plans, and Coach, you led a program where everything, hey, here's the plan. Everything's going to go accordingly in this spot. Then all of a sudden, man, it doesn't. Something's going to throw a wrench in it. Something's going to change. And as a leader, we've got to be able to respond to those situations. Talk about how important, you know, that is for you as a leader in those roles to respond to situations. And what does responding look like in your mind versus kind of reacting to a situation?
Yeah, I can start off, I guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think ultimately that I for whatever reason, when you ask that question, the first thing that comes to mind is halftime, right? You just had a terrible half, whatever it is. And as a coordinator, I'm in the box first time ever and completely hated it, but it's what the head coach wanted. So there is that little time before half when you walk into the locker room, think about how are you going to react, right? Was it really bad? What were the real issues? And I think this was the first time that I've had to really think about, okay, what is my first response going to be? And there were moments where I wanted to go in there and rip their heads off and tell them this isn't what we're supposed to do. But again, I think the time that I had to walk down there, I think it's important if kids are out there joking around, not paying attention, not focused, taking it easy on a team maybe you should beat, then I think your response needs to be aggressive, and it needs to be to wake them up. But I think that first response, specifically talking about halftime when you come in there, is very, very important. And I think it's a matter of what are you trying to get accomplished? You know, if it's a matter of not executing, you're going there ripping ass, they're probably going to be mad at you because that's your fault ultimately as a coach. And I think that kids are looking for you as a leader. And when things go bad, what do they think they need? You know, at least the kids that are leaders in that group. What do you think they need, and what are you trying to get accomplished? You know, I think again, comes down to being a leader and controlling your emotions and knowing when to play mind games and when to motivate and when to teach. And so to the question, I think that first response is huge, especially in bad situations, but equally in good situations. You know, most kids, they want to, especially if you're hard on them and you care about them, they want to do good. You know, like I said, no baby wakes up in this world and doesn't want to do good and is just evil to the core. But, and I think sometimes we forget about the good. I felt like that this season going through it, and we're winning, but we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And they want to see the good. You know, you can't just give them the bad and just be neutral in the good. I think that first response is everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Coach Lovins.
I agree with you, Coach Taylor. I think one of the things I've learned at Arkansas State, Coach Bush Jones does a great job, is he has this term, it's called adapt and adjust. And I think you got to kind of practice that. And I think it's got to be a daily thing. I think as a head coach, you know, I get my next opportunity. I think you got to build in a little chaos, if you don't mind me saying, to see people adapt and adjust, whether that be players, sudden change with the players, maybe with your staff. And as a head coach too, when everything you think is going to go, the right way, you need that as a head coach to understand how you're going to respond too. So everybody in the organization kind of needs it to understand how to respond. And it could be a teaching moment, or it could just be a goofy moment. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you need that, because we always go by the script. Okay, 1st and 10, I'm going to call this. 2nd and 7, I'll call this. 3rd and 10, I'm going to call this. Ball's got to be on the right. It's got to be on the right hash. Well, what happens if the guy spots it on the wrong hash?
Correct.
And what happens if there's, over 3 seconds left and it's the last play of the game? I mean, it's just, you need some chaos in there, and you need some things you got to adapt and adjust. And I think this too, the last piece on this is that as a leader, I really think that you got to make a decision. Everybody's looking to you to make a decision, whether that be right or wrong. If it's for the greater good of the organization, you got to make a decision, and everybody in the organization got to fall in line and live with it.
Yeah.
And, whether it be, whether you're going to order hot dogs or hamburgers after the game, or, you're going to order, or you're going to go for it on 3rd and 10 or 4th and 1, then so be it. But as a leader, though, you got to make a decision and respond to it in that manner.
Man, I think you wiretapped my phone earlier today. I was having a conversation. Our head football coach here, Mike Minner, he played 10 years in the league. And so he comes at it from a different perspective because he played the game so long. Than a guy like me that came up D3 football and you had to work your way up to opportunities. His perspective is totally different than mine. When I first got here, I mean, he would take out periods of practice and he would, hey, we're going to period 10. It'd be period 3. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, why are we doing all these things? And it was all those moving, kind of to your point, coaches, there's chaos in those moments. And it was chaos on coaches. And it was funny, I was just having this conversation the other day. When I was a head coach, I wanted everything to be orderly, right? And it was because I had insecurities as a leader, because I didn't want anybody to doubt my leadership, right? That I knew what was going on in that spot. But what I did is I handicapped my organization from giving them the opportunities to prepare for chaos. The only time we got chaos was on Saturdays. And so we had to figure out how to do it in the most adverse situation. That's what our head coach does a great job here of, and that I've learned being an assistant coach, is create chaos. Who cares if he doesn't like it? He'll get over it, you know? But then as coaches, when we don't like something, how do we get our guys back to center in that spot? Because every Saturday that any of us have ever been a part of, there's 2 things going to happen, something good and something bad. And the bad's going to happen, but how quickly can you get back to the good, and so much of it has to do with us, not just our players. We always talk to our players about that, but to your point, Coach Lovins, we don't practice that, we don't provide those opportunities. So man, it's funny you say that, because I just think that's such a critical piece. And the organization piece, the organizing of your organization is so critical, but don't miss the training of the chaos. Don't handicap your people as far as your strength coach, your position coaches, your equipment guy. Something's going to go wrong with equipment when you travel and how he handles himself. If he's pissed off and he's passing out socks on game day, there's negative energy on everything in that spot. And we all know that. But giving them different opportunities, kind of said to connect, but then also to teach through those moments. Ultimately, that's the leader's job, is to prepare them for those opportunities. And I'll be honest, that's something I would do completely different. If given the next opportunities, don't miss the opportunity to train for those. And so, man, I love that. And that's something, I've learned, and I love being able to go back into this role and see things from a different lens to be able to see those things. So, hey, I know we're kind of running low on time. I want to hit quick with you guys. Each one, Coach Lovins, if you don't mind starting, best leader you've been around. Best leader you've been around. Doesn't have to be football, best leader, period.
Best leader, period. I'd have to say,
Hey, I'll preface this before you say anything. You don't have to, we understand your head football coach that you currently work for. We all understand they're the best leader we've been around. So I'll take your head coach. You can't mention your current head coach. How about that?
Yeah, it would have to be then it had to be, Mark Hudspeth, and I say, and he was, coach at UL Lafayette for a long time, at Austin P and UNA. He's been a lot of different places, but he can get all the arrows pointing one direction. And obviously winning solves a lot, like you guys are saying, but he really can evaluate, everybody that touches the program and get the arrows pointing in the right direction. And that's really key. And I've enjoyed watching that when the times I've been with him. I was on the sideline with that guy for 8 or 10 years. So I got to see a lot, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I'd stick with the player side. Troy Anderson, he's the guy we had last year as a linebacker. He was a second-round draft pick this year to the Falcons, and he by far, I was at Oregon, Mississippi State, and he's by far the best football player I've ever been around. Not even close. And he's just a kid developed late. But let alone his ability to have grown men follow him, let alone his peers, and I thought that was unique. We did this thing. We went up in the mountains before season and had this cookout and all this stuff. And, we had some of the leaders talking. He's a man of few words, but when he talked, you could hear a pin drop. Our head coach was listening, every assistant was listening, and he had that whole room believing that we were going to make it to the national championship game and win it. We made it. We didn't win it, but this is the same guy you're talking about. He was an All-American at quarterback, running back, and linebacker, all three in 4 years here at Montana State. One of the fastest players, over 240 pounds ever at the NFL Combine, and just unbelievable. And he's at the national championship game. He probably had 15 or 16 tackles, but we got our butts kicked, and he's in the locker room, and he had white jerseys on. I'll never forget this. And it was all green, his jersey. And he looked at me. We scored like 3 points, 10 points total, but 7 at the very end. And he looked at me and told me sorry and was sobbing. This is a guy that's done everything. He knows he's going to be a second-round draft pick. He's going to have a long career in the NFL if he stays healthy. And he looks at the offensive coordinator after we have put up 10 points and says, sorry, we couldn't get it done on defense. Crying, played his butt off. And I'll never forget that, especially the start of the season to the end of the season. You talk about humility and talent and understanding what's important, what's not important. The kid was, I think our guys looked at him almost like a god, almost just, hey, that's Troy Anderson. You do what he says and you get out of the way, And, sometimes the coaches felt that way too.
It's funny, those guys that turn into that. I have a kid that just like that. When I was at Merritt and Baylor, Jarrell Freeman, he was the defensive player of the year. Took us to the national championship game. Played 5 years in the National Football League. Played 6 up in Canada. And I'll never forget, like when that guy talked, I was a GA when he was playing. I coached receivers and he was a linebacker. Yeah. And when he said something, everybody's head kind of flinched, right. Like, oh, and everybody's head, not just one person, right. He was the only one that I ever saw tell our head coach, no, we ain't doing that on the field. Everybody was like, okay, we're not doing that, but to your point, it was that respect level that you had from there. And I think that's what's so cool about this game is that there's so many of those moments that you get to teach those spots, that we get to be involved in the spots, because these aren't being taught. Our guys aren't getting that anywhere else. Kind of to your point, which you mentioned the other day, our world is in a spot where we don't teach those things because we don't see value in those things as a whole anymore. And I just think our opportunity that we have as coaches to impact future families, future generations, it's just, to me, it's just the last line of defense because nobody else is teaching these things anymore. Those things become so much more vital and so much more important. And so I love being able to hear what you guys are doing at y'all's places and what you've done. I love this. It's been awesome. I appreciate you guys coming on.
Thank you.
And doing this. I've taken notes on you guys already. So if you see something stolen or putting out, I'll try to retweet you, at least give you credit. I heard it from him. But you never know in this spot. But man, thank you guys so much for being on it. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Braxton. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it.